black man entered their home as a helper. What he discovered was unbelievable. David was a young black man who grew up in a small, quiet town. Life had never been easy for him. His parents were poor, and from a young age, he had learned how to work hard. He carried bricks, washed cars, and helped in farms just to make a little money. When his father got sick and the family had no money for hospital bills, David promised himself he would do whatever it took to help his family. One day, a rich white family in the city put out a call. They needed someone to help around their big house, cleaning, gardening, lifting heavy things. The pay was good, more than David had ever seen. Without thinking twice, David applied. Weeks later, he got the job. The house was huge, with tall gates, bright flowers, and walls so clean they looked like glass. The family, Mr. Robert, his wife Claire, and their daughter Emily, welcomed him in, but not with warm smiles. Their eyes judged him silently. Still, David bowed his head and said politely, "Thank you for giving me this job." At first, the work was simple. David cleaned the yard, polished the silverware, and carried groceries. But soon, things started to feel strange. Emily, the daughter, treated him rudely, like he was invisible. Claire gave him endless chores, harder each day. Robert barely looked at him. But David noticed something. At night, when the lights went out, the family whispered in hushed voices. Doors locked. Secrets hidden. He often heard crying from Emily's room. One evening, while sweeping the hallway, David found a torn photograph under the carpet. It was old and faded, showing a black woman standing beside Mr. Robert. On the back, written in shaky letters, were the words, "Forgive me." David froze. Why was this hidden in the house? Who was the woman? Why did Mr. Robert look younger, but so nervous in the photo? From that night, David's life in the family's home began to twist into something he never imagined. The truth he was about to discover would shake not just the family, but his own soul. David could not sleep that night. The photograph of the black woman beside Mr. Robert stayed in his mind like a shadow. He had hidden the picture under his mattress, but his heart beat fast each time he thought of it. Why was it hidden? Why did the words "forgive me" sound so heavy? The next morning, Claire gave him a pile of clothes to wash. As David bent over the basin in the backyard, he saw Emily watching him from the window. Her face was pale, her eyes red, as if she had been crying all night. When their eyes met, she quickly turned away and pulled the curtain. Something was wrong in this house. That evening, after finishing his chores, David heard Claire and Robert arguing in the kitchen. Their voices were low but sharp. "You should have burned it," Claire hissed. "And risk her finding out the truth?" Robert shot back. "She cannot know. Not now, not ever." David stood frozen outside the door, his hands trembling. Who was she? Was it Emily? Was it the woman in the photograph? His mind spun in confusion. The next day, Emily came to the garden where David was trimming the roses. For the first time, she spoke softly. "Do you ever feel like you don't belong?" David looked at her, surprised. "Every day," he said honestly. Emily's lips quivered. She looked like she wanted to say more, but then Claire's voice rang out from the balcony. "Emily, come inside this instant." Emily left quickly, her eyes filled with secrets. That night, David went to his room and pulled out the photograph again. He stared at the woman's face, then at Robert's stiff posture beside her. Something about the woman's eyes felt familiar. He couldn't explain why, but he felt a strange connection, as if her story and his were somehow tied together. Just as David placed the photo back under the mattress, he heard a soft knock on his door. He opened it to find Emily standing there in the dark hallway, her hands shaking. "We need to talk," she whispered. "I know who that woman is." David's chest tightened as he stared at Emily in the hallway. The house was quiet, the kind of quiet that made every sound louder. Emily's eyes darted around nervously. "Come with me," she whispered. They tiptoed to the back garden, where the roses David had trimmed earlier stood like silent guards. Emily wrapped her arms around herself, shivering even though the night was warm. "That woman in the picture," she said softly, "she's not just anyone. She used to live here. And she wasn't a maid. She was my father's." Emily's voice cracked. "She was my father's wife before my mother." David felt like the ground had shifted under him. "What? But she's black." Emily nodded, tears brimming in her eyes. "Yes, And when my father married her, his family turned against him. They hated her because of her skin. They said he was ruining the family name. They forced him to leave her. And then she disappeared. Nobody knows what happened to her. My mother never speaks of it, but I know she hates even the memory of her. David's hands trembled. And you think your father still keeps her picture hidden? Emily nodded. My father still loves her. That's why he couldn't destroy it. But if my mother finds out I know, she'll... Emily's words trailed off as footsteps sounded on the patio. Emily. Claire's sharp voice pierced the night. Inside. Now. Emily grabbed David's hand before running back toward the house. Her grip was cold, desperate. Please, don't tell anyone I told you. David stood alone in the garden, his mind racing. He felt anger, confusion, and a strange sadness for a woman he never knew. Why did her eyes in the photo feel so hauntingly familiar? When David returned to his room, he pulled out the photograph once more. This time, he looked closer. Under the words, "Forgive me," something else was scribbled faintly. It was hard to see, but with the lamplight, the letters became clearer. David, if you ever find this, know that I love you. David's breath caught in his throat. His knees weakened. The room spun. The woman in the photo wasn't just connected to Robert. She was connected to him. His mother. David's chest pounded as he stared at the photograph again. The handwriting was shaky but clear. David, if you ever find this, know that I love you. His whole body shook. His mother. The woman in the picture was his mother. But how? He dropped onto the bed, his hands gripping the sheet so tightly his knuckles turned white. His mind swirled with questions. Why was her picture hidden in this house? Why had Mr. Robert, this white man, been standing beside her, looking younger and nervous? The next morning, David couldn't focus on his chores. His hands trembled as he scrubbed the floors, his eyes darting toward Mr. Robert whenever he entered the room. Robert looked tired, his shoulders heavy, as if carrying a secret too large to bear. At lunch, Claire barked at David for forgetting to polish the silverware. Emily sat quietly, picking at her food, her eyes heavy with guilt. David knew she was hiding more. Later that night, David gathered his courage and went to the library. The shelves were lined with old books, dusty photo frames, and family awards. As he scanned the room, his eyes fell on a locked drawer in the wooden desk. He pulled at it, but it wouldn't open. Something inside rattled softly. He was about to leave when the door creaked. Robert stood there, his face pale, his eyes locked on David's hand gripping the drawer. "What are you doing?" Robert's voice was low, but sharp. David stepped back. I was just cleaning." Robert walked inside, closing the door behind him. He leaned against the desk, his eyes heavy with sorrow. Then, to David's surprise, he unlocked the drawer himself and pulled out a bundle of letters tied with a red ribbon. "These belong to her," Robert said softly. "Your mother." David froze. You knew her?" Robert's eyes glistened. "Knew her?" "David, I loved her. More than anything. But the world wasn't ready for us." David's heart pounded. "Then why did she disappear? Why did I grow up without her?" Robert looked away, tears slipping down his cheek. "Because they made me choose, and I chose wrong." David felt his chest tighten as Robert's words echoed in the room. "I chose wrong." His fists clenched. "You let them take her away from me." "From us." Robert sank into the chair behind the desk, his face heavy with regret. "I fought David. You don't know how hard I fought. My family threatened me, threatened her. They said if I stayed with her, they would destroy everything I had, my business, my future, even her safety. I thought leaving her was protecting her." David's throat ached. His mother had suffered alone while this man built his perfect life in a mansion. "You think that was protection?" David's voice cracked. "Do you know how I grew up? Hungry. Watching my father die because we couldn't afford medicine. My mother never told me why. She carried the pain in silence. And now I find her face here, hidden like some dirty secret." Robert covered his face with his hands. His shoulders shook. "I never stopped loving her, David. Not for 1 second." Silence filled the room, broken only by Robert's trembling breaths. David turned to leave, but Robert's voice stopped him. "There's more," Robert whispered. Your mother didn't just... Your mother didn't just leave. She disappeared, and I never found her again. David spun around. Disappeared? What do you mean? Robert pulled open the drawer again, revealing a faded police report. David snatched it, his eyes scanning the page. It was dated years ago. Missing person Angela Brown. Last seen outside the very gates of this mansion. David's knees nearly gave out. His mother had vanished here. At this house. Where is she? David demanded, his voice shaking with both fear and fury. Robert looked at him with broken eyes. That's the question I've asked every night for 20 years. The door suddenly opened. Claire stood in the doorway, her eyes sharp as glass. In her hand, she held the torn remains of the photograph David had hidden under his mattress. Her voice was cold, steady. So, you finally know the truth. David's breath caught as Claire stepped fully into the room, the photograph clutched in her hand like a weapon. Her lips curled into a thin smile, but her eyes were cold, sharp, unforgiving. So, she said slowly, the boy finally knows. David's fist clenched. What do you mean by that? Claire walked closer, her heels tapping against the wooden floor. She tossed the torn photo onto the desk. You weren't supposed to see this. You weren't supposed to know anything. Robert stood quickly, his face pale. Claire, stop. He deserves the truth. Claire's laugh was bitter. The truth? The truth would ruin everything, Robert. This house, this family, our name, and him. She pointed at David, her fingers shaking with anger. He doesn't belong here. He never did. David stepped forward, his voice shaking but strong. Where is my mother? What did you do to her? For a moment, Claire's face hardened, but then she smiled again, cold and cruel. Your mother didn't belong here. She was a stain, a mistake. I told Robert that if he didn't let her go, I would make sure she disappeared. And guess what? She disappeared. David's heart pounded in his ears. His vision blurred with rage. What are you saying? Did you hurt her? Robert's hands trembled as he looked between them. Claire, tell me you didn't. But Claire only folded her arms. Some things are better left buried. David's knees shook. His chest heaved. He wanted to shout, to demand more, but his body froze with fear and fury. Suddenly, Emily appeared at the doorway. Her eyes were wide with horror. Mom, is it true? Claire's face went pale. Emily, go back to your room. But Emily shook her head, tears running down her cheeks. You always told me she was just a servant. You lied to me. You lied to all of us. The room fell silent, the air heavy with secrets finally clawing their way to the surface. David's voice cut through the silence, low but powerful. If you hurt my mother, I will find out. I will uncover everything you try to hide. Claire's smile faded for the first time. Her eyes flickered with something David had never seen before, fear. The room shook with silence, everyone's eyes fixed on Claire. David's chest rose and fell as he waited, his fists clenched, his body trembling. Claire finally broke. Her shoulders sagged, and for the first time her voice cracked. You want the truth? She whispered. Fine. Here it is. She took a deep breath, then looked straight at David. Your mother was my sister. The words fell, heavy in air. Emily gasped. Robert closed his eyes and sank into a chair, as if a weight he had carried for years had finally crushed him. David's heart stopped. What did you just say? Claire's eyes glistened, but her face was still hard. She was my younger sister. Beautiful. Everything I wasn't. My parents adored her, but me? I was always the shadow. When she fell in love with Robert, I thought I could handle it. But then she had you. David staggered back. You're lying. I wish I were, Claire said bitterly. But it's the truth. You're not just some servant's child, David. You're blood. My blood. And when my sister died, she paused, swallowing hard. I told everyone she was gone because of her choices. But the truth is, she didn't just die. She died because I pushed her away. I made her believe she wasn't good enough for this family. And the night she left, she never came back. David's world spun. His mother wasn't just some lost figure. She was part of the family he had been serving. He looked at Robert, who nodded slowly, tears in his eyes. It's true, Robert whispered. I loved her. I wanted to marry her. But Claire, she made sure it never happened. I stayed here for the children, for the house. But my heart died with your mother. Emily's face twisted with pain. So all this time, David is family? My cousin. Claire covered her face with her hands. Yes, and I kept him far away so no one would know. I thought it would protect us, but all it did was destroy us. David's anger boiled, but underneath it was a deep sorrow. He wanted to hate her. He wanted to scream. But seeing Claire crumbling in front of him, broken by her own lies, he realized something. Hatred would not bring his mother back. Hatred would only continue the cycle. He took a shaky breath. You ruined my life. You ruined hers. But I will not let you ruin mine. I'll take the truth with me. And I'll carry my mother's memory with honor, not shame. Emily ran to him, her arms wrapping around his shoulders. You're my family, David. Nothing can change that. For the first time, David felt something warm, a sense of belonging he had never known. Robert stood and placed a hand on David's shoulder. You have a home here. If you want it. Claire's sobs filled the room. She had lost everything, her pride, her lies, her power. But David had gained the one thing he thought he'd never find, the truth. As the night ended, David looked out the window into the dark sky. He thought of his mother, her smile, her voice, the love she had given him. And he whispered softly, I found them, Mom. I found the truth. And I'll make you proud. The storm had passed. A new dawn was waiting. And for the first time in his life, David felt free. Final lesson, and so his story teaches us this. No matter how deeply hidden, the truth always rises, and when it does, it changes everyone forever. What if this secret was in your house? If you found this story captivating, don't forget to subscribe and share.